In music, across genres, there are a plethora of amazing acts. Bands, artists, MCs, and DJs. It is a boundless pool of pure human expression. Rock and roll specifically is full of certified legends. Bands like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, The Misfits, Black Sabbath, Motorhead, The Ramones. You get the idea. But among even these legendary acts, few figures count as objectively accepted titans. The classic rock of the 60s and 70s gave way to the metal bands of the 80s and beyond. Glam rock and thrash metal emerged in the early 80s among the angsty post-Vietnam teenagers, wielded as an absolute sword of rebellion against the Reagan-era conservative population. But we're not here for a hawk and load history lesson. Not this time, at least. We're here to discuss one of heavy metal's most significant and impactful tragedies, the senseless and untimely death of one Dimebag Darrell Abbott. And I fancy myself somewhat of a Pantera super freak. Not for nothing, but I was basically the #1 Pantera listener on Spotify in 2020. I'm right in thinking that's insane, yeah? I also wear this razor blade necklace in honor of Dimebag Darrell, gifted to me by one of my best friends.
That's so badass.
The point is, I'm qualified to tell you this story. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is the Hawk and Load Case Files, and I'm your host, Hawk and Load. I am both excited and saddened to bring to you today the case of Dimebag Darrell Abbott, a titan of metal and one of my heroes gunned down on a beer-soaked stage in Columbus, Ohio. To relay to you, my friends, not only the impact he had on me, but the world of heavy metal, I have a lot to get to. This is a tale of brotherhood, turmoil, rock and roll, and mental illness. Without further ado, let's get into it. Darrell Lance Abbott was born August 20th, 1966, the country music songwriter and producer Jerry Abbott and his mother Carol. Now, I can't tell you the story of Darrell without also telling you the story of his elder brother Vinnie Paul. Vinnie Paul was born March 11th, 1964, and with the Abbott boys so close in age, it's unsurprising that they were inseparable. They bonded together not only in childhood, but for their entire lives. The Abbott boys reported a happy childhood, despite their parents divorcing in their early teen years. The boys lived with their mother in Arlington, Texas, right in the middle of Fort Worth and Dallas, with their father living close by. As a child, Darrell would bike over to his father's house for guitar lessons. To say he took well to the six-string instrument, especially in hindsight, would be a massive understatement. At 12 years old, he would begin his guitar journey and was immediately infatuated with it, a feeling I know myself and other guitarists listening know all too well. With influences from Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, and Kiss, he was dead set on learning their songs. His father, Jerry, was so supportive of the endeavor that he would learn Kiss songs on the guitar just to teach them to his son. Before Darrell received his first guitar, he and Vinnie Paul had a go at mastering the drum kit. In an interview with Metal Hammer magazine, Vinnie Paul said,
"It's kind of the old Eddie and Alex Van Halen story. We both started playing drums when I was 14 and he was 2 years younger than me. I just got better than him and wouldn't let him play him anymore."
And like the Van Halens, the boys would master their instruments in parallel to one another. Once they married themselves to music, they became inseparable. They didn't know it yet, but they were destined for legendary status among even their influences.
On his 12th birthday, he got his first guitar.
The next thing I know, Darrell's standing in his room, got his guitar strapped on in a Kiss outfit. Got his face all done up like Ace Frehley in the whole 9 yards.
Once he started playing, he was completely obsessed with the guitar. Took it to the bathroom with him.
In 1981, Vinnie Paul was asked by classmates to join their band as their drummer. Vinnie Paul agreed on one condition, that his little brother Darrell could join as a guitarist. The band was hesitant at first, stating that Darrell wasn't very good, but ultimately accepted the arrangement, and the Abbott brothers joined their first band. Lead singer Terry Glaze went on to say that over 6 months, Darrell just morphed into an absolute powerhouse on the guitar. Originally named Gemini, Vinnie Paul would later go on to rename the band Pantera. Pantera at first was an image-conscious makeup and spandex glam metal operation. Inspired by the flashy performances of bands like Kiss, Darrell would adopt the stage moniker Dimebag Darrell. The band would go on to sign with Metal Magic Records, a label created by their father Jerry, and record their first album, Metal Magic, in 1983. Darrell was only 16 years old. While the songs weren't the greatest, the most redeeming quality of these early tracks was Darrell's absolute genius guitar playing. The band would go on to release 2 more albums in as many years. All of the music from these first 3 works were strict to the glam metal styles of the early 80s, purely influenced by bands like Motley Crue. However, a parallel music scene was rising through the ranks. Thrash metal is a hard-hitting, fast-paced expression of pure teenage rage. Bands like Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, and most prominently Metallica were unleashing thrash metal to the underground, and as a result, the young Abbott brothers were entranced. Pantera's sound began to move further away into heavy, thrashy territory. Lead singer Terry Glaze was unhappy with the instrumental evolution, eventually leading to his departure from the band. In 1986, the spot was filled by a young Philip Anselmo, and the rest was history.
Skinners. Just kidding. What's happening, man? I'm Dimebag from your boys Pantera. There's your man right there. Did you cut it off?
After a full embrace of the heavy, groove metal sound that the Abbotts evolved into, along with the primal concrete voice of Phil Anselmo, Pantera became a powerhouse of heavy metal in the late 80s. In 1990, the band released the now classic Cowboys from Hell. It was followed up in 1992 with the equally legendary Vulgar Display of Power. With a transformed image, Dimebag Darrell renounced his flashy, glam-infused name and adopted the now inseparable Dimebag moniker. By the time they released Far Beyond Driven in 1994, they had established the metal supremacy and the band was absolutely on top of the world. Through the early 90s, the Abbotts, bass player Rex Brown, and lead singer Phil Anselmo were working together seamlessly and bonded as brothers on a warpath to legendary status. They couldn't miss. However, with the approach of the new millennia, substance abuse and turmoil had begun to take their toll and cause a rift in the relationship between the Abbott brothers and Phil Anselmo. Frequent disagreements on top of Anselmo's increasingly worrying heroin addiction made for a rough patch for Pantera in the late 90s and early aughts. After the September 11th attacks caused the band to cancel a tour through Ireland, they announced that they would be taking a hiatus. Through the following years, Anselmo would begin releasing music with other projects of his, while the Abbott brothers were waiting for communication from him to continue Pantera's reign. By 2003, the relationship was so untenable that the group disbanded. The Abbott brothers found out third hand at the same time that the rest of the world did when Anselmo announced it to the press. 20 years after its formation, Pantera was no more.
We couldn't communicate. Nobody would call us back.
We got everybody on the phone here, and we need to talk to Phil. And he would never come to the phone. Never. It was always sleeping in the shower, or there's a hurricane coming, he's got to board the windows up. I mean, give me a break.
Now, chances are you're finding my heavy metal history lesson either long-winded or not fleshed out enough, but I feel it extremely necessary for me to relay to you the history of Pantera to explain what is to come. Pantera is a timeless heavy metal classic and one of my all-time favorite bands, obviously, so I understand the outlet of expression that it can be for diehard fans. Dimebag Darrell specifically was a massive inspiration to me as a musician and entertainer. He was, in my opinion, the greatest guitar player to ever pick up the instrument, precisely because of his ability to grab your emotions with a touch harmonic squeal. And as a diehard Pantera fan, I am also able to empathize with the villain of our story. Not that I would like to, and I refuse to humanize a monster, but I can't help but wonder if my feelings for the end of Pantera's behemoth reign were similar to that of one Columbus, Ohio man. Nathan Miles Gale was born in Lansing, Illinois on September 11, 1979. He was the youngest of three boys. His mother, Mary, and father, Gerald, separated when he moved to Ohio. He went to Benjamin Logan Elementary School for 5th grade. School administrators noticed mental health issues early on and put Gale in special education classes for a learning disability. Though he was a bit of a troublemaker, racking up a few disciplinary actions through middle school, Gale was entered into normal classes by his freshman year of high school. With his mother getting another divorce a year later, Gale's sophomore year saw him acting out even more than he had before. He and his mother moved to Marysville, where Gale attended a vocational school, graduating at 18 with certifications as an electrician. In recreational times, Gale would hang out with his friends in a buddy's rundown house by the highway, partying late into the wee hours of the morning. His friend Ryan Hughes gifted him a copy of Pantera's classic Vulgar Display of Power album and states,
He listened to that tape for 2 years, every day, all day long.
After graduating from Marysville High School in 1998, Gale enlisted in the United States Marines. However, Gale failed to serve his full term, and it's speculated that he was discharged under a Section 8. A Section 8 discharge is a category of discharge from the United States military, used for a service member judged mentally unfit for service. Friends reported that Gale was a huge fan of Pantera. They also reported that Gale began to act strangely in his early 20s, showing signs of paranoia, claiming that the band was stealing songs that he wrote. Other friends said that he would also experience hallucinations. Along with his obsessive music tendency, he began writing in a journal, uncontrolled streams of consciousness, claiming that he was unable to hear his thoughts. Nathan Gale was falling deep into a mental illness, but his friends took all the signs as jokes. Gale was reserved enough that they weren't sure if they should be concerned or not. Acquaintances referred to Gale as Crazy Nate. Now, while I haven't found any official diagnosis, it is speculated that Gale suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. While serving in the Marines, he was treated for mental illness issues with medication, lending credence to the Section 8 discharge theory. An article in Blabbermouth magazine states,
First is the fact that the killer had an extensive criminal career that started when he was placed on probation at the age of 12. Throughout his teens, he was arrested and detained for multiple thefts, eventually resulting in a felony conviction, breaking and entering, drug use, and was even kicked out of his home for domestic violence. With all the contact he had with our social service professionals over the years, no one recognized his mental illness. Instead, his behavior was chalked up to drug abuse.
About the disbanding of Pantera, a former friend of Gale's reported,
When they broke up, I think he felt some kind of personal connection, like he felt left out or betrayed. This kid listened to their albums every day. He was obsessed with Pantera.
Gale was often seen walking the streets of his hometown Marysville listening to Pantera on his headphones. He would sit in the tattoo parlor across the street from his home and stare at the patrons menacingly until he was told to leave. At 6 foot 3 inches, weighing 220 pounds, Gale was imposing and awkward. He lacked friendship and a proper support system. By this point in his life, the only person he was close with was his mother, Mary. In an article for Blender magazine, journalist Chris Norris wrote a great piece detailing Nathan Gale and dove deep into the unwell man's life through interviews with his ex-friends. In one passage he writes,
Sociologist Donna Gaines, whose 1992 book Teenage Wasteland studied the culture of alienated teenage metal fans, describes the role music can play for especially troubled kids. Something about the music speaks to them on an inner psyche level. It really can become what recovery experts call a higher power. Somebody like Gale was searching for something to help him make sense of his feelings.
This is a fantastic article, by the way, and I think it does an amazing job of getting you into the potential headspace of Nathan Gale leading up to his mass murder. Donna Gaines eloquently describes the connection that bands like Pantera had with lower-class, underprivileged teenagers of the 90s. A lot of what she says applies to the same class of kids through the following generations, myself included. But this is where the similarities stop, and you begin to see the monster. A monster that I hope none of us can relate with. For someone with Gale's level of obsession, Donna Gaines says,
such an event could have a psychological impact similar to that of a parent abandoning a young child. He's not going to be able to get back on his feet and say, let me see what the Pantera members' new music is. Maybe I can grow with them. Or, them. Let me check out Slayer. He didn't have that. What was at stake was survival. Faith, hope, possibility, identification, community.
Jumping back to 2003, Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul Abbott had been without a musical outlet for nearly 2 years, waiting for Anselmo to respond to their pleas. With Anselmo announcing the end of the band, the boys needed a new band to front. The duo recruited vocalist Patrick Lockman and bassist Bob Zila and formed the new band Damageplan. Damageplan recorded and released their debut album in 2004, and it debuted at number 38 on the Billboard 200, selling 44,676 copies in its first week. To promote their new album, Damageplan was booked for a show at the La Rosa Villa nightclub in Columbus, Ohio, on December 8, 2004. In the parking lot of the small venue sat a deranged and enraged Nathan Gale, carrying a 9mm pistol and ammunition. Gale was sat seething at the wheel, obsessively in distress over the end of his favorite band, Pantera. Let me be very clear. As much as I've read into Gale's life and mental state, this video in no way is intended to humanize him or justify his actions. He is a monster, and while I wish he received help, it is to spare the lives of his victims, not for his own peace of mind. Nathan Gale.
That was Sergeant Brett Mull of the Columbus, Ohio Police Department describing some of what went down at a nightclub there last night. He said that a 25-year-old named Nathan Gale went on a deadly rampage at a show by a heavy metal band called Damageplan. Witnesses saw the gunman jump up on stage. They say he fired repeatedly at the band's guitarist, Dimebag Darrell Abbott. Before he turned his gun on the crowd, he managed to kill 4 people.
We're a good bit into this story, and I imagine you're as surprised as I am at exactly how complex it is thus far. While the star victim of the night is indeed one Dimebag Darrell Abbott, he was by far not the only one. I want to take a moment and introduce you to a few people integral to this story. For every supervillain, the world needs equally superheroes. Jeff Thompson, Aaron Hulk, and Nathan Bray. These 3 names are the names of heroes. I wanted to take the time to elevate them in our story today because their deaths were just as senseless as Dimebag Darrell's. Jeff Mayhem Thompson was Damageplan's head of security. He spent his time with them ensuring their safety and remaining close by during performances. Mayhem was an absolute mountain of a human being. Nathan Bray was a Columbus, Ohio man. He was 23 years old and a recent father to a 2-year-old boy. Bray was in attendance, in awe at the opportunity to see his hero, Dimebag Darrell, in the flesh. Bray arrived early enough to get front and center for the night's festivities. Aaron Hulk was a 29-year-old security guard for the La Rosa Villa nightclub, and he too was at the ready, intending to put himself in potential danger to protect whoever needed protecting. Remember these men as we progress through the nightmare events of December 8th, 2004. Reading from the eloquent article by Chris Norris, The Revenge of Crazy Nate, Nathan Gale sat in his 95 Pontiac Grand Am staring at the Alarosa Villa, a small family-owned nightclub, a tan stucco building on a lonely strip off I-71 in the northern outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. Had hosted metal bands since its opening in 1974. Now it was midway through a decent Wednesday bill. The headliner was Damageplan, a new group founded by ex-Pantera guitarist Dimebag Darrell Abbott and his brother, drummer Vinnie Paul. Tickets, $8. It was dark, around 40 degrees, and Gale had been in the parking lot for hours. 3 times, security guards had made him move his car out of the way of other traffic. Now it was parked near the looming tour bus in the rear entrance. Gale wore jeans and a hooded sweatshirt with the logo of the Columbus Blue Jackets hockey team stretched over his 6'3", 266-pound frame. The 25-year-old glazed through a pair of thick, eye-magnifying specs that his former comrades in the Marines had called birth control glasses for their woman-repelling qualities. His blonde hair was shaved to the scalp. Gale got out of the car and started pacing. Other clubgoers and staff had already noticed the big, goggle-eyed figure stalking around the lot and wondered what he was up to. Someone called over that the supporting act was on stage and Gale might want to go in. "I don't care about no local bands," he said. He'd already had a gentle rebuff from Damageplan's gigantic security chief, Jeffrey Mayhem Thompson, when he was hanging around the tour bus asking if Dime or his brother were aboard. Finally, at 10:15, Gale decided to try one more time. At 10:15 p.m., Damageplan was taking the stage. Roughly 400 excited fans made a sea of people in this small Columbus, Ohio nightclub. They were electric with anticipation, and the legendary Dimebag Darrell Abbott took the stage and started with the opening chords to Breathing New Life. Meanwhile, a deranged and enraged Nathan Gale was outside of the small nightclub. He asked Damageplan soundman Aaron Burns, inquiring about the location of the legendary Abbott brothers. Burns informed Gale that they were already inside, ready to take the stage. Gale then scaled the wooden fence to reach the back patio entrance. Parking lot security guard spotted him, but by the time he reached the trespasser, it was too late. Gale had entered the building and made his way to the stage in a full sprint. Gale stormed quickly through the crowd of 400 excited fans, being trailed by security who were in pursuit. Security guard Mitch Carpenter was a bit intimidated by Gale's size and also assumed he was a fan attempting to get into the show without paying. As Gale took the stage, the giant Jeffrey Mayhem Thompson took strides toward what he thought was a would-be stage diver. Gale then stepped past the band's bassist and approached Abbott from behind, grabbed his hair, pulled him into a headlock, and fired one round point blank into the skull of one of heavy metal's greatest titans. Dimebag Darrell was dead and thrown to the floor. The feedback of his guitar pierced the stunned ears of over 400 witnesses. 6 feet away, a stunned Vinnie Paul Abbott witnessed his little brother and best friend ended in the most gruesome of ways.
10 seconds into the set, 25-year-old ex-Marine Nathan Gale stormed the stage, brandishing a 9mm pistol.
I just screamed as loud as I could, and bam, bam, bam.
I just remember screaming, he's shooting something, and Vinny came off the drum riser, and he's coming at me, and he's going, he just shot my brother, he shot my brother.
I went to jump from behind the drums, run out and help. And John, Dom's guitar tech, tackled me and held me on the ground.
As soon as I knew he was pointing the other way, we both ran across the drum riser and got to the other side of the stage.
As Darrell lay dead on the stage and panic began to stir, Mayhem Thompson and security guard Aaron Hulk charged forward toward Gale in a heroic attempt to subdue him. As they advanced, Gale unloaded 9 rounds at the 2 behemoth men, fatally striking both men in the chest. As both crew and attendees began to evacuate and call authorities, 23-year-old Nathan Bray, having just witnessed the senseless attack on Dimebag Darrell, took the stage in a frantic and unbelievably selfless effort to administer CPR to the fallen idol. As Bray locked eyes with the monster Nathan Gale, he held his arms up, palms out, indicating that he wasn't a threat. Gale responded by silently reloading his 9mm Beretta and shooting the young hero for his trouble. He later died in transport to the hospital. Drum technician and roadie Cat Brooks attempted to subdue Gale but was shot twice in the leg and taken hostage. Brooks was held with a gun to his head by Gale as Gale frantically dragged him around the stage. Nearby, Officer James Niggemeyer responded to the calls of an active shooter. He entered through the back door, undetected by Gale. As he approached Gale from behind, he wielded a loaded and readied Remington shotgun. As Gale's hostage managed to break free, Officer Niggemeyer raised his weapon and blew Nathan Gale's fucking head off.
In a matter of 5 minutes, Gale fired 15 shots before Officer James Niggemeyer took him down with one single shot. A single shot that saved lives. Moments later, Officer Niggemeyer steps in front of the camera, shotgun in hand, a blank look on his face.
The metal world was shattered in the wake of Dimebag Darrell's death. Thousands of fans attended his public memorial, and the guest list included artists such as Eddie Van Halen, Zakk Wylde, Corey Taylor, and many, many others. Eddie Van Halen donated his original black and yellow striped 1979 Charvel Bumblebee guitar, which was featured on the back cover of Van Halen 2, with which Dime was buried. Dimebag Darrell Abbott was laid to rest in a family plot next to his mother. In a drug-addled interview with Philip Anselmo, shortly before Dimebag Darrell's death, he said this about his strained relationship with the ex-bandmate.
He would attack me vocally, and just knowing that he was so much smaller than me, I could kill him like a fucking piece of vapor, you know? He would turn into vapor. His chin would, at least, if I could smacked it. And he knows that. The world should know that. So physically, of course, he deserves to be beaten severely.
With this statement taking place so close to the shooting, the Abbott family attributed it to the motivation of Nathan Gale to perform the heinous acts. As such, they barred Anselmo from attending Darrell's funeral.
Philip continued to serve up salvos in the press. In the December 2004 issue of Metal Hammer, Anselmo was quoted as wishing violence against the guitarist.
I remember Dom going, dude, this ain't funny anymore. This is not funny. What have I ever done to that guy to deserve this other than stand up on stage and kick ass for him?
The comment about Dimebag deserving a beating and whatever the hell. We had finished that damn interview. It was a tongue-in-cheek thing that I said, and it ended up on the cover of the damn magazine.
I've got the audio tapes of Phil in that interview. He said what he said, word for word, in a very calm tone of voice, and he's got to live with that the rest of his life.
In an emotional message filmed in the wake of Dime's death, Anselmo, still within the grasp of a heroin addiction, blamed the heavy metal magazines and media for the shattered relationship between him and the Abbotts. In somewhat of an emotional and drug-fueled haze, Anselmo offered heartfelt apologies to not only the Abbotts, but the rest of the world that was now forever without Pantera's music.
This is about Darrell, my brother of 17 years, Pantera's music changed people's lives, man. We weren't just some band. He was not just some guitar player. I want to say, bless his family and all of his close friends. And I never got a chance to say goodbye in the right way, and it kills me. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to his band members. I'm so sorry to his family and everyone else who was just senselessly killed in Columbus, Ohio.
Vinnie Paul Abbott, traumatized and broken, spent the years following his brother and best friend's death, putting the pieces back together. Eventually, Vinnie Paul went on to form a new band, Hell Yeah, going on to release 6 albums with them and continuing to bring his southern ass-kicker talents to the world. On June 22, 2018, Vinnie Paul Abbott was discovered deceased in his Las Vegas home. The autopsy revealed that he died of dilated cardiomyopathy and coronary artery disease. His final performance took place just 5 days before his death. He was laid to rest next to his brother and mother. 2 of heavy metal's greatest titans were now reunited. Jeffrey Mayhem Thompson, Nathan Bray, and Aaron Hulk were called upon to be heroes and accepted that burden when it meant the most. They paid for their bravery and courage with their lives. May they rest in peace. Officer Niggemeyer, the hero cop who stopped the carnage of December 8, 2004, went on to suffer mental issues due to the blood and carnage. After the incident, superiors moved the young cop from a first responder to a detective in the robbery division. He was diagnosed with PTSD and severe anxiety, and ultimately, it was too much for him, and he gave up his badge and gun and moved on with his life the best he could. He said,
"Cops are regular human beings. Things affect us the same way they affect everyday citizens. We relive it and have to deal with the aftermath. I'm happy to have been able to end the situation with no further tragedies after I arrived, but it certainly hasn't made my life any better. I'm still in counseling.
I sincerely hope life has treated him well, and he has my deepest sympathies for his situation. He is a hero, and with 35 rounds left in his pocket, Gale was poised to cause far more bloodshed without Niggemeyer's intervention." In surprisingly recent news, Pantera announced a tour for 2023. Initially, it was met with a pretty negative reception. I was almost offended by the announcement for a couple weeks until they announced that Zakk Wylde and Charlie Benante were going to be representing Diamond Vin. If any 2 people on the planet can pull it off, it's these 2 legends. I'm excited to see how it turns out. They vowed to make sure they get as close as possible to the original sound in memory of the Abbott brothers.
This is called domination!
When I was 13 years old, I picked up my first guitar. Soon after, I discovered bands like AC/DC and Black Sabbath, and the rest is history. I got into Pantera just 1 year after Dimebag Darrell's death, never having had the chance to even hope to see him in the flesh. It's an odd feeling when you discover and fall in love with someone's legacy after they've passed. You mourn the loss as if it had just happened. Hell, writing the script for this video was very emotional for me, to say the least. I can guarantee that there are plenty of teenagers right now and every year since discovering the opening notes to Walk and feeling the same emotional connection that I did. Nathan Gale was a disturbed young man with no future and no support system. Coupled with serious, undiagnosed mental health struggles, he became a monster. He was a monster that robbed us of 3 heroic men and one of heavy metal's greatest contributors. Pantera was a powerhouse. It was greatness contingent on the sum of its parts. It wouldn't have been as powerful if you removed even one member from their position. That rings especially true, in my opinion, for the greatest guitar player to ever touch the instrument. Darrell, Vinnie Paul, Rex, and Phil have left a lasting legacy that will ring through time. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made it to the end of our somber and heartbreaking story. It was one that I very much so hope I've done justice to. If you like the video, subscribe for a lot more true crime and commentary content. If there's a person, subject, or shit show you want me to cover, leave it down in the comments along with your thoughts about this video. I'm particularly interested in whether or not you guys would like a Hawk and Load history series, where I would cover things like Metallica, Motorhead, and Pantera in much further detail than I did in this video. But alas, this was the Hawk and Load Case Files. I'm your host, Hawk and Load, and until next time, be excellent to each other.
Be excellent to each other.